Good morning. It's Thursday, 27th of May, back in the Nook on a bright and warm morning, and it's quiet, so I can get out into the Nook and do some unboxing. And I'm going to go back into this box. So already I pulled out of this one. Basically, we've looked at an all rolled up. And my all rolled up. So, yep, my all rolled up. And the all rolled up that I am sending to my friend Keith in the States, or we are sending to my friend to our friend Keith in the States for his birthday, along with a dice tray. So we've already looked at what a dice tray is, and these are all available from All Rolled Up, and they're great. Essentially pieces of gaming, basically paraphernalia. They're useful for holding your dice and your pens and everything, and but having all in one place. So what we're going to have a look at instead is this, which I will open now, and what we've got is this. This is the Dee Sanction, and it's by Paul Badowski, who is the designer of the Cthulhu hack. And here I've reviewed multiple titles of his before, and this was just kickstarted, and essentially this is a special edition of Kickstarter, a little mini game. So what we've got is the Sanction of Magic, and there we are, and we have Dr. Don Dee himself with his famous black scrying glass. So, when Elizabeth Tudor succeeded to the throne in 1558, she found herself under assault from all sides, challenged by the legacy of her family's actions. Henry VIII severed ties with the Church of Rome. He made himself an enemy of Catholicism. Later, Elizabeth's half-sister sought to undo their father's work. Amid widespread religious reform, upheaval in the palaces and pastures of Europe, and the spread of the written word of Protestant belief, God grew distant. The barrier created by a wall of blind faith, maintained over centuries by the Church's strength, wavered. The wider population saw the resurgence of bugs in the Fae as the byproduct of the malefic acts enacted by opposing sides, Catholics and Protestants. In 1563, the Queen passed an act against conjurations, enchantments, and witchcraft. It made magic used to kill another a capital offence, and triggered in no small part by a Catholic plot to assassinate the Queen through sorcery 2 years earlier. It also made a felony of the use of magic to maim, consort with evil spirits, provoke love, or seek buried treasure. In 1564, the Queen passed an amendment to the Act on her most trusted advisor's advice. The Dee Sanction permitted the practice of magic in defence or the beneficence of the realm, and it created a loophole through which convicted traitors might use their heretical knowledge to work a penance in service to Her Majesty. Okay, the sanction fell under the jurisdiction of both Francis Walsingham, master of the Queen's spy network in Europe, and Dr. John Dee, astrologer, alchemist, and companion in words to the Queen. They recruited the unfortunate malefactors rescued from execution as agents, bound to a covert intelligence service. The Dee Sanction offered the first line of defence against inimical forces, both common and supernatural. So, essentially, you have a role-playing game in which the player characters are agents of the Queen, working directly for Dr. Don Dee, perhaps the most famous magician in British history outside of Merlin, and Francis Walsingham, one of the most famous spy masters. Essentially, it's a traditional role-playing game, sort of set between, essentially set during the 1560s, 1570s, and up to the 1590s, and ultimately basically the Dee being essentially unsanctioned when James VI of Scotland becomes James I England and Scotland. So, it's a traditional role-playing game, loosely based on historical fact and personalities, and essentially they can use magic, but they work to subvert supernatural magical threats. They're ordinary people with tainted history, offering a chance to stay their execution and right past wrongs. It's very simple. I know you basically use D6, and essentially it makes clear what it's not about. So it's not about historical pedantry. Play to the themes in the field like a TV serial or film based upon the period that adds based on true events. And that's about it. So essentially, the agents are not heroes. They've got no future. They're criminals, sentenced to be executed to pay for their heretical pursuits. They're vulnerable, expendable amateurs, only slightly supernatural criminals. They're marked for death. Beneath us, conflicted, mostly in the dark, and scapegoats. Typical player characters. And we've got basically a short history, Tudor history, and essentially that's fairly familiar for most, familiar with sort of like most people. I say one of most people. Most British role players will be familiar with much of the history of the period, and then you have. Let's use a very simple character sheet like that. Okay, and quite easy. It uses basically, it's not just D6. You basically got a dice step of up from D4 to D12, and the characters have essentially resources, physical, intellectual, and supernatural, as well as gear and so on, and favors of the angels, secret various abilities, and fortune and so on. And that's fairly nicely explained. Very nicely done little rule book. And essentially, you have establishing and using tradecraft, and in other words, this is magical spies, or essentially, I can put it, the equivalent of Elizabethan MI5 Operation Magical Spies. Sort of a bit like the Laundry Files, but in Tudor times. I mean, obviously, not exactly, but that's it. So, you have an occupation with different focuses there. I said, looking forward to digging into this. It's not going to be a while yet, because essentially I've got a number of different titles to review this weekend and next that I want to get to. And then, exploration of the game, and sort of like, basically characters are running into something ghoulish there, and so on. And you have the general sort of like, you have nature of the enemy, very simply described. Basically like there's a stats there for an angry mob. Okay, and you have something called the unraveling. Unraveling measures the changes effects that the changes have upon ordinary people, like the agents. Essentially, basically, it's essentially when people's belief is called into question. For example, such an example here is given Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries, and essentially it's the equivalent of like the sanity system. And then we go to magic as well, the tools of arch defense. The enemies of Elizabeth, so we have propaganda, the Pope and the Catholic Church, Mary Queen of Scots, of course, Rudolph II's Holy Roman Empire. And it's interesting that sort of like John Dee would actually, I believe, actually spent time at the court of the Holy Roman Empire as well, if I remember rightly from my other role-playing supplements. There's an adventure for Atlas from Atlas Games, which does that, and then we get discussion of sort of like essentially the Tudor Age and what it's like, a bit more background, a deeper background, and so on. Some of the more esoteric things, and then we go on to Jim's tools. A nice image of Her Majesty there, Elizabeth I, Virgin Queen, of course. And then we have a one-shot adventure, The Lost in Translation, Dee Sanction. That's quite long, actually, quite nicely done. I'm sure, see how it goes. We'll be interested to see what a longer adventure would like a campaign. We've got tables of possessions, manners and mannerisms, nice bit of alliteration, random names, bestiary, all the way down to a glossary of terms, and then a listing of the patrons in there. So yeah, yep, very nicely done. And I'm listed in there as a favourite of the Queen. So also basically, I'm going to do it now, but I'm not going to do another unboxing here, because if you backed it, the other option, okay, well, you could also get basically dice tray for the Dee Sanction. And this is a little dice tray, image of Her Majesty on the inside, and also its own all rolled up. And I will get this out and show it to you. And this is the Kickstarter exclusive. Comes as you've got these metal tags here. These are really quite nice little touches here. I think essentially you have a serpent there, and the jewels, and so on, just capping off the end of the ties. Aglets, I suppose you would call these. And then where you would normally tie this, there's a little clasp. You can just undo it like that, and it opens up. So on one side you have Her Majesty, and then you have such a nice bit of almost like brocade style cloth there, which seems very fitting, sort of like quite luxurious. On the inside you have pockets for your dice and your pens, and your pads there, and then obviously the section in there for your dice. So that's the Dee Sanction all rolled up. So I shall put that back. Well, okay. Well, thank you for watching another unboxing in the Nook. I hope you enjoyed that. If you have, please do click the like button down below. And if you've got any comments or feedback, then please do take the time to add those, as I do read and respond as when I can. And of course, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, then please do subscribe. You'll see me out here with another box to open, and of course a nice hot cup of tea. In the meantime, thanks for watching again, and I'll be back soon with another unboxing in the Nook. Bye for now.